New York City. In New York City, a giant mechanical orb with a purple glow and spikes coming out of it, was flying above the city, as a battle between the aliens known as the Krong and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was happening inside, as they tried to save their friend, April O'Neil. But meanwhile, inside of a building below the Technodrome, a battle between two mortal enemies was happening. One of them was what looked like an anthropomorphic rat, wearing a brown robe while holding a jade staff. This was Hamato Yoshi, also known as Splinter. While the other was in what looked like armor, with spikes on his shoulders, arm guards and legs, along with a helmet and mask. This was Oroki Sake, also known as the Shredder, leader of the Foot Clan. They were both fighting, exchanging blows, with Splinter having an advantage, thanks to him using his rat abilities to his advantage. But Shredder had just stunned him with something that stunned Splinter. He had taken his daughter Miwa long ago, after leaving Splinter for dead back in Japan, and had raised her as his own. Splinter yelled in a rage at this, as he attacked Shredder again. As Splinter attacked him, Shredder was barely able to defend himself. Damn, I didn't want to use this, since it will attract that accursed clan, he thought, before his body was covered in what looked like a dark aura. Before he was instantly upon Splinter and pummeled him with a barrage of blows. Before he sent Splinter crashing into the wall, making it crack from the force. See cursed energy. How? Splinter groaned out, as he slowly got to his feet. A little something I picked up in Japan from your wife's best friend, Shredder said with a smug tone. Splinter's eyes widened at this. Kushina and Minato would never teach you, he said, as he glared at him. Obviously, but that didn't stop me from learning the basics without their knowledge, Shredder said as he glared at Splinter. Splinter then smirked at this. But now that you've used it, they'll come looking for you, he said. Shredder growled at this, but before he could say anything, a teen girl appeared. She had short dark black hair that had a large portion of it dyed blonde in the back, along with two long hair strands on the right side, with bright red eyeliner over the tips of her eyebrows. She wore a distinctive black and silver armored ninja outfit. Father! The teen girl yelled, as she ran to Shredder to check on him. Splinter looked at the teen girl, and his eyes widened as she was the splitting image of his late wife, Tang Shen. Miwa? He asked. Kurai. That is Splinter. The one who took your mother from us, Shredder said, pointing at Splinter. Kurai's eyes widened at this, before she glared at Splinter and pulled a katana off her back and charged at Splinter. While Shredder chuckled evilly at this, Splinter quickly ran up the wall and towards the window, which he kicked open so he could make his escape. Why do you run, coward? Kurai yelled up at Splinter. Splinter looked at Kurai with a sad look, before he took off. Shredder smirked behind his mask, before he fell to his knees and held his side. Father! Kurai yelled, as she ran back to his side. I'll be fine, but I need to get out of the city for a bit, Shredder said, as he forced himself to his feet. Kurai said nothing to this, but nodded, as she wasn't about to argue with her father. In Japan. Inside a dojo in Japan, an older male was meditating, who had blonde spiky hair. This was Minato Namikaze. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, showing they were blue. He walked towards the door, and opened it as headed for the living room, where he saw a woman with long red hair and violet eyes, and a teen boy with spiky blonde hair, blue eyes and 3 whisker marks on his cheeks. These were Kushina and Naruto Namikaze, his wife and son. Hey Dad, you're just in time for breakfast, for once, Naruto said with a grin, as he looked at his father, before he went back to looking at the TV, which was showing a news report on what looked like an alien attack on New York. Minato looked at the TV, and his eyes widened slightly at this, before he composed himself. What's wrong, honey? Kushina asked curiously, as she placed a bowl of rice and some fish in front of her husband, before she went to put Naruto's empty dishes in the kitchen sink. I felt Shredder use cursed energy. Kushi, Minato said firmly, deciding to just tell her. Kushina froze at this, and dropped the bowl she was holding into the sink. Shredder, are we getting a new coleslaw maker? Naruto asked curiously, with a tilt of his head. Kushina snorted at this, while Minato smiled slightly. I'm gonna use that, when I finally beat him to death, Kushina said with a grin, as her shadow started to move, as if it was alive. With the shadow's hair moving in the air, as though they were tails on a beast. Wait, someone else besides us can use cursed energy. Naruto asked in surprise, as what his dad said registered with him. He's not supposed to. A long time ago, he spied on us and stole some of our secrets, Minato said with a frown. He had a lot of balls to pull that, after he killed my best friend and her child, Kushina growled out in anger, before Minato placed his hand on her shoulder to calm her down. Rest assured, he will answer for that too, Minato said firmly. Tell me where we're heading, dear, Kushina said, after she calmed herself. Wait, we're leaving Japan. Naruto asked, surprised at this. Minato nodded at this. We're heading for New York City, he said, pointing at the TV. Which still had the news about the alien invasion on it. Do aliens count as our problem? Naruto asked curiously. It's a world-ending threat, so I'm gonna say yes, Kushina said with a nod. Haha, my first time kicking an alien's butt. Naruto yelled happily with a fist pump. Well, get packing. I'll get us on the next flight out, Minato said. If we're gonna stay there for an extended period of time, I should probably open a business, so we can gather information from customers, probably a restaurant, Kushina said, as she also left to go pack. Minato nodded at this, as he could see that being useful in the big city. A week later. It had been a week since Naruto and his family had moved to New York City. In that time, his mother and father had bought a building, and turned it into a restaurant. It also had a big apartment upstairs for the family, and a dojo area for training. Right now, the blonde teen was walking out of his parents' restaurant, on his way to the high school. Have a good day, son. Minato said as he left. And if anyone bullies you, don't leave marks, Kushina said with a grin from behind the counter. Please, like I'm gonna use Kurama on some street punks. Naruto said with a scoff as he left. Kushina chuckled at this, before she looked at her husband. So, what's the plan? She asked him. For now, I'll keep an eye out for the Foot Clan. And when I find them, we track down Shredder, Minato said firmly. I'm looking forward to it, Kushina said with a grin, as she went back to the kitchen, as customers started to come in. Later with Naruto. It was after school, and Naruto walked up to his new school locker and opened it, and started to pack up, before he would head home. Remember, your teacher said to talk to your assigned tutor, a voice in Naruto's head said. Naruto sighed at this, as he knew he needed help with his trigonometry work, as he nodded and looked around before he noticed a teen girl nearby, who was looking at her open locker. She had shoulder-length ginger hair that was tied in a short ponytail, with a yellow headband on her head. She was also wearing what looked like a yellow shirt and blue jean shorts, along with green leggings and black boots. Naruto recalled seeing this girl in his trigonometry class, and had noticed she had got all the questions she was asked by the teacher correct, so he started to walk towards her. Ha! Of course you choose the redhead. The voice in Naruto's head yelled, before he started to laugh. Zip it, Kurama, Naruto thought, as he approached the girl. So, are you Lu King for the meaning of life in your locker? Naruto asked the girl with a smile. The girl looked at Naruto and blinked in surprise, as she got a look at Naruto. While she had heard about a new kid, she didn't really pay attention, since she was lost in her own head today. Oh, not really. Just lost in my thoughts, she said, not recalling his name. Naruto stuck his hand out. Naruto Namikaze. At your service, miss, he said with a grin, hoping to get her name. The girl chuckled at this, as him being polite was new for her, after what her life has been like lately. April O'Neil. Now, what can I do for you? She said, while she took his hand and shook it. Well, Miss O'Neil, I'm needing a tutor for trigonometry, and I noticed that you seemed pretty smart in class today. So, I'm hoping that you can help me, Naruto said with a grin, as he rubbed the back of his head. You were watching me? April asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, you kinda stand out with your hair. Not that tea's a bad thing, Naruto said with a sheepish chuckle. April blushed a little at this, before she composed herself. Well, I suppose I can tutor you, since helping you will look good on my record, she said. Naruto smiled at this and nodded, as he took out his phone. Here, let's exchange numbers, so we can text, he said. April nodded at this, as she had no problem with this, as she took out her phone. So, your parents named you after a storm? She asked with a cocked eyebrow. Finally, Everyone always says that my name means a ramen topping, Naruto said with a smile at April. Well, I know it can mean that too. But I was hoping that your parents wouldn't be that cruel, April said with a smile. Come on, I'll treat you to something to eat, before we can start with tutoring, Naruto said, as he led April out of the school. At least get to know me first, before taking me on a date, April said with a teasing smirk. PFF'd. I'm just treating a new friend. I'm not looking to date anyone just yet. As I just moved here for crying out loud, Naruto said, as he and April walked down the sidewalk. Where did you and your family move here from? April asked curiously, figuring she would ask her new friend some questions. Kyoto, Japan. We decided we needed a change of scenery, Naruto said, as he stopped in front of his parents' restaurant. The Rising Tide? April asked curiously, taking note of the sign. Yup, my parents' restaurant that they just opened. Friends get a discount, Naruto said with a smile, as he opened the door for April. April smiled at this, as she went inside the restaurant with Naruto close behind. Unseen to them, across the street on a rooftop, what looked like an anthropomorphic male turtle, that looked to be a teenager with a purple mask and a bow staff on his back, watched them enter the building. This was Donatello, aka Donnie. April is on a date, Donnie said in shock, as he watched them with a pair of binoculars. Later, Naruto and April were sitting on some swings in a playground across the street of the Rising Tide, going over the basics of trigonometry with a box of pizza between them, with the Rising Tide label on it. Well, you're making some progress. But you have a lot more to cover before you can get your grade up, April said, as she closed her book. Hi sensei, Naruto said with a bow at April, with a grin on his face. April grinned back at this. As she put her book in her backpack, and looked up at the sky, as she swung a little bit, before she sighed, as she thought about what had happened recently. You okay? Naruto asked curiously, noticing April's mood. Right now, I'm better than I have been the last few days, April said, as she stopped swinging. You get into a fight with someone? Naruto asked her with a raised eyebrow. Kinda. My dad got sick recently. And I found out it was because of some ex-friends of mine, April said with an annoyed tone. Naruto winced at this, as he knew sometimes you could have fights with friends. Well, don't worry. I may not be the smartest, but I try my best to not hurt my friends, he said. Oh really? April asked with a smirk at Naruto's determined attitude. Yup, my mom would gut me like a fish if I did anything to hurt a friend, Naruto said with a shudder. April laughed at this. Yay, from what little I heard back at her restaurant, your mom sounds hardcore, she said as she smiled. Oh, you have no idea. Naruto said, as he leaned back on the swing and looked up at the sky. I miss not seeing the stars at night, he grumbled. Yay, not a lot of places to see the stars in the city, April said. As she looked up too. Well, it's getting late anyway. Come on, I'll walk you home, Naruto said, as he held out his hand to April, so he could help her up. April took his hand and let him help her to her feet, as they both grabbed their school gear, before she and Naruto walked down the street. Donnie was watching this, glaring daggers at Naruto. How dare that blonde try and steal my April away from me? Donnie growled out, as he gripped the binoculars tightly. He then heard a buzzing sound in his knapsack, and after some rummaging, he pulled out his shell phone. What? He asked, answering it. Seeing an image of what looked like an anthropomorphic turtle, like him, only he wore a blue mask, and with two katanas on his back. This was Leonardo aka Leo. We have a problem, Donnie. A voice said. How bad is it? I'm busy, Donnie was saying, before Leo's image was changed to a third anthropomorphic turtle, who had a red mask. This was Raphael aka Raph. Opening curly bracket. Spying on April and her new friend isn't important, you idiot. Raph yelled at Donnie, making the shell phone shake. Before Donnie could respond, the image changed again, this time to another anthropomorphic turtle, who was wearing an orange mask. This was Michelangelo aka Mikey. Yay. If anything, it's kinda creepy. I heard that ladies don't like guys that are desperate, dude, Mikey said with a grin. And how the shell do you know? Raph's voice asked. Guys, focus. Donnie, we need help with this. Leo yelled, as he turned the shell phone to look at what looked like something out of a horror film. It had green gooey arms and legs, that were coming out of a container, that showed a mouth, eyes and all the inside parts of a human inside it. Why is Timothy out of the lair? Donnie asked in shock. He has been drinking that mutagen you have been experimenting on, and now he's on a rampage. Raph's voice yelled in the background. April, mutagen man's friend. A booming voice yelled out. I'm on my way. Donnie yelled, as he activated a tracker to trace the call to the others, before he took off across the rooftops. With Naruto. Naruto was walking April to her place, and stopped at her door. As she approached it, thanks for the help with trigonometry. I really appreciate it, Naruto said, as he smiled in gratitude. No problem. And I'm sure that I'll ask you for a favor in return in the future, April said with a smile. Does this mean you will continue to tutor me? Naruto asked hopefully. April thought about this with a coy grin, tapping her finger on her chin. Get me a discount at your parents' restaurant, and it's a deal, she said. Done, Naruto said as he chuckled along with her, before he walked away while waving at her. April smiled at this, before she went into her apartment. As Naruto walked past an alleyway, he heard a commotion coming from inside said alleyway and paused, as he took a look and saw the turtles, trying to fight Mutagen Man and keep him in the alleyway. What the heck is that? An ugly alien version of the Hulk. And he's fighting against turtles? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. They don't look cursed to me, Kurama said. As he didn't feel any cursed energy coming off them. The more you struggle, the worse it will be for you, dude. Mikey yelled, as he rode on Mutagen Man's head. Turtles hurt April. Mutagen Man destroy turtles. The self-proclaimed Mutagen Man yelled. Naruto glared at this, before he cracked his hands, as he put on an orange glove, which had a spiral symbol on the back of it. You're not exactly any better, acid hands. Raph yelled, as he avoided a swipe from the mutant, which melted some trash cans nearby. Mutagen Man soon grabbed Mikey, and threw him at his brothers and started to make his way out of the alleyway towards April's place. Hey! Naruto yelled, as he blocked his way and walked towards him. Get out of the way. Donnie yelled, as he and his brothers got up. Yay, he's dangerous, Leo said. As the turtles got ready to attack again. Naruto glared at this, as he made his decision. So am I, he said firmly, before in a burst of speed, he was next to Mutagen Man, and before he could respond. Naruto spun around and slammed his cursed energy-covered fist into the glass tube, instantly shattering the glass to pieces, and sending Mutagen Man flying down the alley, and slamming into a brick wall, cracking it. The turtles all gained shocked looks at this display from Naruto. Dudes, what was that? He covered his fist in some dark energy, like in this comic I read, Mikey asked in surprise. I don't know, but he one-shot him easily, Raph said, as he held his sai at the ready. Yay, kinda like that One Punch Man anime I watch, Leo said with a nod. Naruto then looked at the turtle with an impassive look. You can see my cursed energy? He asked with a firm tone, as he held up his gloved fist, which was glowing. I don't wanna be cursed. Mikey screamed in terror, as he ran and hid behind a trash can. April, Mutagen Man's mouth groaned out, as it laid outside his destroyed pod. Still alive, Don't worry, I'll help you rest in peace, so you won't hurt anymore, Naruto said with a bow. Before he raised his fist. Whoa, there's no need for that, Leo yelled, as he and Donnie blocked Naruto's way to Mutagen Man. Yay, I still need to find a cure for him, Donnie said with a determined look. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this, as he looked at them before he looked at the helpless Mutagen Man. He's not cursed kid, so I say let him off with AW. Arning, Kurama said to Naruto from inside his mind. Naruto nodded at this, as he lowered his fist and his cursed energy subsided. Okay, have it your way. But if I catch him attacking anyone again, he won't get another chance, he said firmly. This got surprised looks from the turtles. You're just gonna let us take him, just like that? Raph asked suspiciously. Yay dude, you're not gonna finish him and feed your dark power? Mikey asked, as he poked his head from behind the trash can he was hiding behind. Naruto shook his head at this. Nah, if this can be settled without taking life, I'll take that option. As a jujutsu sorcerer, it's my job to protect, not kill, he said firmly, as he dusted himself off. Juju what now? Donnie asked, as he had never heard this term before. Is it some kind of drink? Mikey asked, as he walked back over. This got groans from the other turtles, while Naruto chuckled, before he looked at his watch. Ah hell, I need to get back home, before my mom comes looking. See you four later, he said. Before he ran off. Hey, wait, we have questions. Leo yelled after Naruto. Save it for later, Leo. We need to get Timothy loaded up in the Shellraiser, and get him home, Donnie said. As he picked up a mouth, and threw it into the destroyed tube. That guy was kinda cool. I wonder if he knows any cool spells, Mikey said with a grin, as he and his brothers went to help Donnie move the tube. I don't think he's that kind of sorcerer, Mikey, Leo said, as they all moved the tube. Yay. Plus, there is no such thing as magic, Donnie said. It could be science, duh. T's so advanced it looks like magic, Mikey said with a grin. This got groans from the other three turtles. No more Thor movies for you, Raph said with a groan, as they all kept moving the tube. Later, in the turtles' lair. The four turtles had just gotten back, and Donnie was making his way to his lab to get Timothy set up in a new more secure tube, while the others sat down in the living area to watch TV. Where have you all been? An older male voice asked, getting their attention, as they turned around to see an anthropomorphic rat, wearing a robe and a jade green cane walking over. This was Splinter, the turtles' sensei and adoptive father. We were chasing down Timothy sensei, Leo said with a bow at the mutant rat. Not that we did much against him, before Whiskers showed up and won. Punched him with his glowing fist, Raph said, as he crossed his arms with an annoyed look. Yeah, just like the immortal Iron Fist. Mikey yelled with a grin, with everyone ignoring him, used to his antics. Someone helped you? Splinter asked, wanting to know if this was a threat or an ally. Yes, sensei. He called what he used cursed energy, and was surprised we could see it, Leo said with a nod. Yay. He called himself a jujutsu sorcerer, Donnie said, as he came into the room crossing his arms, as he thought about Naruto with April. Splinter's eyes widened slightly at this. You're all sure he called himself a jujutsu sorcerer? He asked firmly. Yay, he wasn't casting spells like a sorcerer though. Where was his wand? Mikey asked, before Raph Dope slapped him on the back of his head. Only book he reads. And it's Harry Potter, Donnie said with a groan. Who is a wizard, and sorcerers use staffs, Raph said. Do you know something, sensei? Leo asked Splinter curiously. I haven't heard this term in a long time. My sons, Splinter said firmly. Story time, Mikey said with a grin, as they all gathered around Splinter. Jujutsu sorcerers are people specially trained to use curses to fight other curses, Splinter said. As he walked in front of them. Huh? The four brothers asked, tilting their heads in confusion. Curses are apparitions that are formed from negative emotions. Jujutsu sorcerers use curses to fight them, and protect regular people, Splinter said, explaining the basics to them. Apparitions? Mikey asked curiously. It means spirits or ghosts, Mikey, Donnie said. He's a ghost hunter. Mikey yelled in surprise. In a way, my son, yes, Splinter said with a nod. Who ya gonna call? Ghostbusters. Mikey yelled with a smile. So he's an ally? Leo asked curiously. Thinking that if jujutsu sorcerers protected people from these curses, then they must be good people. He didn't seem like one, he really roughed Timothy up, Donnie said with a scowl. He fights evil spirits, Donnie. He probably is used to things having to be roughed up, Raph said with a shrug. Indeed, my sons. From the stories I have heard, curses look quite monstrous, Splinter said firmly. No wonder he didn't freak out when he saw us, Mikey said with a smile, as that was a nice change. Splinter nodded at this. As for if he's an ally, he let you all go and didn't finish Timothy off. So I would try to be friendly. If you see him again, he said firmly. Oh, we will see him again. I mean, after all, he's hanging out with April. Right, Donnie? Raph asked with a grin at his brother. Donnie scowled at this, as he didn't say anything. Ooh, drama. Nyuk, 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 Mikey said with a teasing grin. Donnie's eyebrow twitched at this, making Raph and Mikey laugh. A few days later. It was morning, and Naruto was walking to school. And as he walked past an alleyway, April ran out and bumped into him, causing her to fall on her butt. Whoa whoa, where's the fire? Naruto asked, as he quickly helped his friend to her feet. It's nothing, April said with a scowl, as she walked past Naruto and towards school. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this, before he ran after her. Hey, if you're having trouble, you can talk to me, April, he said, as he began walking next to her. April sighed at this. I'm fine, Naruto. I just had an encounter with an ex-friend, she said, as she thought about Donnie. Oh, and is this ex-friend of yours a walking, talking turtle? Naruto asked her with a raised eyebrow. April nodded absently at this, before she looked at Naruto with wide eyes. I met them the other night. They were fighting some mutant that was trying to get to your apartment. They seemed pretty nice to me, Naruto said as he chuckled. Yay, well, they didn't cause your dad to turn into a mutant bat, April said with an angry tone. Naruto paused at this, not expecting that. Okay, you're gonna have to explain this one to me, he said, before he started to follow after April again. April sighed. Before she began telling Naruto what happened. As they walked, they didn't notice they were being watched from a rooftop by Kurai. After school, Naruto and April walked out of school. And April was explaining more of what happened with the turtles. Okay, so to summarize, extra-dimensional aliens, secret ninja clans and ooze that can mutate people, which was dropped on the city, caused the turtles dropped the ball. Which saddle affected your dad? Does that sum it all up? Naruto asked April, as they walked. Yay, pretty much. I'm surprised you're not more surprised, April said. April, I've seen things that would make your head spin, Naruto said with a smile. Your mom scaring bikers out of her restaurant isn't that bad, dude, April said with a chuckle, as they entered the rising tide. I heard that red, Kushina yelled from behind the counter, as she took a payment from a customer. Well, it's not that bad. It's New York after all, and you gotta be tough to get by here, April said with a nervous chuckle. Huh, fair enough. What can I get you and your girl brat? Kushina asked, as she handed them each a menu, as both sat at the bar counter. Naruto spluttered at this, while April blushed, hiding her face behind the menu. Honey, they just met, Minato said with a chuckle, as he took an order from some customers. So, we knew each other a few days before you asked me out, Kushina said with a smile. Yay, 'cause you were following me like a lost puppy, Minato said with a chuckle. Mom was shy, Naruto asked with a snicker at the idea of his mom being shy. Please, tell me more. Zip it, brat. Or no ramen for a week, Kushina said, as she took April's menu and order. Naruto made a mocking face at this, making April giggle, before they started to talk again. Minato smiled at this, before he went back to work. Look, April, I can see why you're mad at your friends, Naruto said, as Kushina came out with their food, ramen for Naruto and a personal pizza for April. But, April said, feeling like there was more to this, as she ate a slice of her pizza. Well, from what I could see from my only encounter with them, they may be a little bumbling sometimes, but they mean well and would never do anything to hurt you on purpose, Naruto said, before he started to eat his ramen. April said nothing to this, as Naruto had a point. Naruto then swallowed his ramen, and looked at April. Besides, I can tell you miss them, he said with a grin. How do you know? April asked with a raised eyebrow, as she ate another slice of pizza. Well, their favorite food is pizza, right? And you have been eating that a lot since I met you, Naruto said with a smile. April paused at this, as she thought about this and realized that Naruto was right, before she looked down at the ground. I'm not saying you should forgive them right away, but Naruto said, as he held a ring that was hanging on a necklace around his neck. April looked at Naruto, and saw that he looked both sad and mad while in his thoughts. Sometimes, things happen that are out of our control, and what's important is how you deal with it, Naruto said, as he let go of the necklace. Minato and Kushina heard this and frowned, as they knew what Naruto was thinking about. April thought about this and said nothing, as she went back to her pizza. Later, it was now night, and Naruto was walking April back to her place. Suddenly, what looked like people wearing black clothes, gray arm and leg guards with a red bandana on their heads while making mechanical noises appeared, before they all quickly surrounded Naruto and April. You know these guys? Naruto asked, as he put on his gloves. Kinda, April said, as she took out what looked like a black fan, with a blade along the rim. Naruto took note of the lotus symbol on it. Before he blocked a strike from one of the foot soldiers. That was unnecessary, he said with a glare, before he slugged the robot in the chest, making the robot's entire top half cave in, before it exploded. What the? April was saying, before she dodged some swipes from some foot soldiers, and broke away from the group. Get moving, April. I can handle these guys, Naruto said firmly. As he slugged another foot soldier, sending its head flying. April hesitated at this, before she ran off, climbing up a fire escape and making her way up it and up to the rooftops. The foot soldiers started to follow her. But one was stopped by Naruto, who then threw it at one of the other foot soldiers, breaking them both. They are after April, huh? Naruto asked as he glared. ND saw that there were a lot more jumping across the rooftops, going after April. You could use me and end this quickly, before going off to save your mate, Kurama said from inside Naruto's mind. And have you scare her? No thanks. And she isn't my girlfriend, Naruto said, as he toyed with his necklace and held his ring. So you're gonna summon her? How do you see her reacting to your little friend? Kurama asked with a cackle. I can trust her to not hurt her, Naruto said firmly, before he pulled the ring off the necklace, and held it up to his finger. Hinata, Naruto thought to himself. Yes, Naruto. A female voice said in his mind. Help me save my friend, Naruto said, as he put on the ring, and in a burst of cursed energy a strange creature appeared. It was stark white at the top, what looked like a black tail on the ground. It had no eyes, sharp teeth and claws, and what looked like white hair on its head, that ended with black tips. Please only destroy the robots, no kill. Inhumans, Naruto said kindly to the creature, who looked at him. Of course Naruto, the creature screeched in a female voice, before it flew off. With April. April was running across the rooftops, jumping over any gaps as she did. While the footbots chased after her. She soon had to make her way down to the streets below, which she did with a fire escape, but the footbots were close behind her. When she made it to the ground and ran, her path was suddenly blocked by what looked like another robot. This one was red, with a metal helmet and silver on its shoulders and hands, while holding what looked like a laser sword and whip. Sorry April, but this chase is over, Kurai SSID with a smirk at her, as her footbots surrounded April, as Kurai's new robot grabbed her. Suddenly, an ear-piercing screech was heard above them. And what looked like a monster tackled the new robot. Leave Naruto's friend alone, Hinata screeched out, as she used her claws to tear through the robot easily. April's eyes widened in shock hearing this. As the rest of the footbots moved to attack Hinata, but they were easily being decimated. What the heck is that thing? Kurai asked, as she pulled out her sword, and stood at the ready. April. Donnie yelled, as he and the other turtles jumped down to them. Hey April, we're here to, it's a ghost, Mikey was saying, before he screamed while pointing at Hinata. As she was ripping apart the footbots. What the shell is that? Raph said, as he took out his sei, ready to fight as this thing put him on edge. I think Master Splinter wasn't kidding. When he said curses are monstrous looking, Donnie said. Hinata ripped the arms off the final footbot, and started to beat it to pieces with its own arms, before she turned to look at the turtles, April and Kurai. Be ready for anything, Leo said firmly, as he started to sweat just from this thing looking at them. Not human, but not a threat to Naruto's friend, Hinata said, as she looked at the turtles. Wait, you know Naruto? Leo asked curiously. Dude, he can summon ghosts to do his bidding. Mikey yelled in shock. You are so dead, if you cross him Donnie, Raph said with a smirk. Kurai took this distraction and went to attack April, but before she could get close, Kurai was sent flying into a wall by Hinata, leaving a crack in the wall. Kurai groaned at this, and wiped blood from her mouth. Before Hinata grabbed her and held her in the air. You are a threat to Naruto's friend. I hate you, Hinata screeched as she held Kurai. Kurai started to sweat at this, as she tried to struggle but she couldn't move. Is this how I die? She thought, as she started to sweat in terror. Hinata. Naruto shouted out, getting everyone's attention and looking up at Naruto, who was standing on the rooftop above them. Glaring at Hinata. Hinata froze at this, and looked up at Naruto. Put her down, now. Naruto said firmly, before he jumped down to the ground. Hinata instantly put Kurai down, before flying to Naruto's side. I'm sorry. She was gonna hurt your friend. Please don't hate me. Hinata sobbed out, before Naruto patted her on the head. It's fine Hinata, you did good. Now get some rest, Naruto said with a kind tone to her. Hinata said nothing to this, before she disappeared, as if blown away by the very wind itself. April and the turtles were surprised at the fact that the monster they saw easily defeated a squad of foot bots, and almost killed Kurai, was so docile around Naruto and obeyed him. Naruto then looked at Kurai, who was wincing as she got up. Are you gonna be okay, miss? He asked curiously. Kurai said nothing to this, before she threw down a smoke pellet and disappeared, thanks to the smokescreen. Naruto sighed at this, before he turned to April. Are you okay? He asked curiously. Am I okay? I just watched a monster, worse than any mutant, tear apart a bunch of robots. April yelled at Naruto in a panic. What was that? Leo asked, as he put away his katanas. I'll explain later. Now April, mind telling me who these four are? Naruto asked, as he looked at the turtles curiously. These four are my friends that I told you about, April said. These are your friends again? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. April nodded at this, before turning to Mikey. Go on, introduce yourselves, she said with a nod. Donatello over there in the purple is a technical genius. Who is technically a genius? Mikey said, as he pointed at Donnie. Donnie just gave a wave at this. Raphael over there in the red, is like a big cuddly teddy bear, if big cuddly DDY bears were incredibly violent, Mikey said, then pointing at Raph. Raph gave a smile, as he crossed his arms. This is Leonardo, he's in the blue, and our fearless leader, silent but deadly, Mikey said, as he gestured at Leo. Leo gave Naruto a nod. And I'm Michelangelo, sporting my signature orange. And I'm a triple threat. Brains, brawn and obviously, my dazzling personality. Ladies like to call me Mikey, he said. As he pointed at himself. Naruto nodded at this. Well, I'm Naruto Namikaze. Sorry I didn't give you guys my name last night, and sorry if Hinata scared you all, he said to them. Yay, that friend of yours has a scream that can wake the dead, dude, Mikey said, as he rubbed his ear. What the heck was that? April asked curiously. I'll explain when we get out of sight, Naruto said firmly. As he didn't want to explain this while out in the open. We're not far from our home, Leo said, knowing that he should be friendly to Naruto, like Splinter said. Naruto nodded at this. Lead the way then Leo, he said. Leo and the turtles led the way, and after a few blocks, they arrived at a sewer grate, which Donnie opened with his bow staff. Please tell me they are kidding, Naruto told April with a slightly disgusted look on his face. Just take a deep breath Whiskers, April said, as she followed the turtles, as they climbed into the sewer. You'll get used to the smell within minutes dude, Mikey called out from inside the sewer. Naruto grumbled at this, before he climbed down after them. The great jujitsu sorcerer going into a sewer. Oh, if the others back at the academy could see you now. Gahahahahaha. Kurama cackled in Naruto's head at this. Naruto's eyebrow twitched at this, as he tried to ignore this, as he climbed down into the sewer. Later in the turtles' home. Naruto was led into the turtles' lair and looked around at the living room, as the turtles all sat down and relaxed. Welcome to our home, Leo said, as he sat down. Mikasa, dude, Mikey said with a grin. Naruto nodded at this, as he noticed a bunch of pizza boxes nearby. I'm guessing you guys love pizza, as much as April mentioned. He asked with a chuckle, as Mikey and Raph fought over the last slice of pepperoni. You bet, pizza is the best, oi. Mikey said with a grin, before Raph took the slice from him. Hey, too slow, little brother, Raph said with a grin, as he ate the pizza. So, I'm guessing they are who you learned to fight with that battle fan. Naruto asked April, as he sat down next to her on the couch. No, I learned from Master Splinter, April said, as she shook her head. Splinter? Naruto asked curiously. That would be me, Splinter said, as he entered the room. Ah, a giant rat, Naruto yelled out, jumping to his feet. Relax, Splinter doesn't bite. Donnie said with a snicker at Naruto's reaction. Right. Sorry about that sir, Naruto said, as he bowed his head, as now that the shock was gone, he could see Splinter carried himself almost like his dad or mom. It's quite alright. Though if you are a jujitsu sorcerer, I would imagine you have seen way worse than me, Splinter said with a friendly tone to put Naruto at ease. Oh yay, you should have seen it, sensei. He sicked this big demonic-looking monster that destroyed all the foot bots, Mikey said with a grin. And beat up Karai, and almost worse, before Naruto made it back off, Raph said. Splinter paused at this, but composed himself, and made a mental note to thank Naruto for saving her later. So, you know of jujitsu sorcerers? Naruto asked Splinter curiously. Indeed. Back when I was a human in Japan, my wife and I were friends with some. They even offered to teach me, but I wanted to live a simple life with my wife. Though looking back, I suppose I should have taken that offer, Splinter said with a sigh. Naruto frowned at this along with the others, as he could tell from Splinter's tone his wife was most likely not among the living anymore. Who were the sorcerers you were friends with? Most of them come from a clan, so maybe I have heard of them. Naruto asked curiously. They were named Minato and Kushina Namikaze, Splinter said with a small smile. Naruto nodded at this for a moment, before he did a double take, along with April. Wait, those are my parents' names, he said with wide eyes. Plot twist. Mikey yelled dramatically, before Raph poked him in the forehead. Ah, that makes sense. You have your father's hair, and your mom's spirit, Splinter said, as he paused trying to find the right word. Well, that makes things easier with your parents. When they ask why you smell like a sewer, April said to Naruto with a chuckle. What brings you and your family to New York? Splinter asked curiously. Oh, Mom said something about going after some guy named the Shredder. Dad said something about him toying with cursed energy, when he shouldn't, Naruto said with a shrug. You're after the Shredder. The turtles all yelled together in surprise. Wait, you know who he is? Naruto asked in surprise. It is a long story, my young sorcerer. Please sit down, and I'll explain. My sons, get him some food, as this will take a bit, Splinter said, as he sat down to explain. One explanation later, Splinter had just finished explaining his last fight with the Shredder, and that he had been working with the Krong, in addition to using cursed energy to defeat him. Alien robot tech. I suppose that explains why the robots could see Hinata, Naruto said, as he had been wondering about that. Huh? Mikey asked with a confused tone. I think he means, alien tech lets the Krong and the Robo-foot soldiers see cursed energy, Donnie said. So why can we see it then? Raph asked curiously, as he crossed his arms. Oh, that's easy. Only those with the talent to use cursed energy can see it, Naruto said with a grin at them. The turtles and April yelled out in shock. Learning this could help you all a lot against the enemy, my sons, Splinter said, as he rubbed his beard in thought. Cool. New sensei, Mikey said, as he placed his arm around Naruto's shoulder in a side hug. Actually, it's not my call if you get tea. Rained, Naruto said with a sheepish chuckle. Mikey said with a pout at this. Who do we need to ask then? Leo asked curiously. That'll be my mom and dad, Naruto said with a nervous tone. Minato would be a great teacher for you. Kushina though, I would stick with Minato, Splinter said after some thought. Yay, Miss Kushina is hardcore. She once had some purple dragons running from her restaurant, April said with a chuckle. Is it okay to meet them, sensei? Leo asked Splinter, as he knew it was best to ask him. Of course, my sons. I know I can trust them. Just be sure to tell them about me. And I'm sure they will be welcoming, Splinter said with a nod. Why not go see them yourself? Naruto asked curiously. I don't want to scare your mother, she has a thing with rats, Splinter said with a sigh. Wait, my mom is scared of rats? Naruto asked with a smirk, as a plan for pranks formed in his head. Before April poked him in the forehead. Don't poke the bear, Whiskers, April said, while she shook her head. Naruto grumbled at this, as he rubbed his head, before he turned to look at the turtles. Okay you lot, follow me. I hope you're hungry, as my mom will probably want to feed you all, he said, as he led the way out of the sewer. If Kushina attacks you, mention my name and tell her. Her responsibility with Miwa applies to you all too, my sons, Splinter said to his sons, as they left, getting nods from them. So, your mom's a cook. Raph asked curiously, as the turtles and April followed him. She runs a restaurant from what I saw, Donnie said with a shrug, before he froze upon realizing what he just said. How do you know that? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow, as he looked back at Donnie curiously. I may have been keeping an eye on you, thinking you were part of the Krong, Donnie said. That makes sense, Naruto said with a nod. It does. Mikey asked curiously, not seeing Naruto's logic. Well, yay. The Krong pose as humans all the time, right? So of course you all would be suspicious of new people making friends with April, Naruto said, as he approached the ladder leading up to the surface. Yay, that's why, Mikey said with a snicker, along with Raph while Donnie grumbled. Inside the rising tide, Mom, Dad, I'm back, and I've brought some friends, Naruto yelled out, as he entered the restaurant with the turtles and April. Kushina came out of the kitchen, and smiled at him. Hey sweetie, and, Kappa's back, you vile monsters. She yelled out, seeing the turtles behind Naruto. Kappa, cappuccino. No thanks, makes me hyper, Mikey said with a smile. You have had cappuccino? Naruto asked curiously. Don't ask, Leo said with a shudder at the memory. Had to lock Mikey up in solitary for a weekend, Raph said with a groan at the memory. Step away from my baby boy, now, Kushina said, as she pulled out what looked like a spear out of her own shadow. Whoa, Mom, stop, they are friends of mine and April's, Naruto said, as he waved his hands about. Yay, plus, we are related to a friend of yours, Donnie yelled as he ducked under a swipe from the spear. And who is this friend? Speak quickly, before I fillet you, Kushina said, as she readied her spear again. Hamato Yoshi, Leo said firmly, as he took a ready stance with his katana. Kushina paused at this, her eyes widening at this, before she lowered her spear. She then looked at Naruto. Explanation. Now, she said firmly. Naruto nodded at this, as he sat down. One explanation later. So Yoshi didn't die that day. Well, at least there is some good news aft. That day, Kushina said with a happy smile, as she dropped her spear, which was engulfed by her shadow. Yay, and he said something about your responsibility with Miwa also applies to us, Raph said, remembering Splinter's words. Kushina paused again at this, silent as she looked at the turtles. Miss, are you, Donnie was asking, before Kushina instantly swept the 4 turtles into a hug. Oh, I can't believe it. I have 4 godsons, Kushina yelled with a bright smile, as she hugged them. Donnie said nothing to this, as he couldn't breath. What? Raph yelled in surprise. Godsons, Leo asked, also in surprise. Cool. Ellipsis. What's a godson? Mikey asked, looking at Naruto and April. It means that Splinter saw them as people, who he knows he can trust, and who'll be there for you, if worse comes to worse, Naruto said. Trying to make it simple for Mikey. Miss Kushina, Donnie can't breathe, April said. Oh, sorry, Kushina said, as she dropped the 4 turtles, who fell to the floor. Donnie, don't go towards the light. Mikey yelled out, as Donnie took deep breaths. Oh, walk it off. What are you, a wuss? Kushina asked Donnie, as he and the others got up on their feet. Donnie is more an inventor and tech man of the team, Miss Kushina, Leo explained. So he's a geek, got it. Also, call me Ka-san, Kushina said firmly to the turtles. Mikey raised his hand at this. It means mother, shell brain. Raph said, slapping him on the back of the head. Oi, is that how you treat your little brother? Kushina yelled at Raph, getting in his face. Raph blinked at this, but before he could say anything, he spotted Naruto behind Kushina making a killing gesture on his neck. Well, yay. When he's being a moron, Raph said to Kushina with no fear in his eyes. Naruto face-palmed at this. While shaking his head, Kushina said nothing to this, before she slammed her fist into Raph's gut. This made the other turtles flinch at this, while Raph keeled over and fell to the ground, holding his stomach while gasping for breath. Is this how you treat a godson? Raph groaned out, while Kushina cracked her knuckles. Well, yay. When he's being a moron, Kushina said, using Raph's words from earlier. Ooh, Ka-san used your own logic against you, Mikey said with an impressed look. Now, how about I feed my new godsons? Kushina said with a smile at the turtles. We would be honored. Miss Kushi, Leo was saying, before Kushina glared at him, making him flinch. I mean Ka-san, he said with a nervous chuckle. Kushina nodded at this, before she went behind the counter. Any requests? She asked them. Pizza. The four turtles yelled out. Kushina laughed at this, before she nodded and went into the back of the restaurant. Naruto sighed in relief, glad that this went better than expected. Before Naruto and April could sit with the turtles, Minato walked into the room. There you are, son. Why do you smell like a sewer, and why are there 4 kappas in the restaurant? He asked, looking at the turtles, while tilting his head in confusion. Okay, 1 pepperoni hot and ready. Oh, hey sweetie, you meet your new godsons. Kushina asked with a grin, as she brought out a pizza and placed it on the table, which the turtles started to eat with gusto. I'm sorry, what? Minato asked with wide eyes. Long story short, your old friend Hamato Yoshi is alive and living in the sewers. And they are his adopted sons, Naruto said, summing it up for his dad. So, he's like a sewer rat then? Minato asked curiously. Gah, don't joke about that. I can't stand rats, Kushina said with a shudder. Before she went back into the kitchen. Who wants to tell her? April asked after a moment of silence. Not it. Naruto, Donnie, Raph and Mikey all yelled together, while Leo's mouth was full of pizza, causing him to choke in surprise. What else is there to say exactly? Minato asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, they can see cursed energy, Naruto said, deciding to cut to the chase. Minato's eyes widened at this, before he gained a serious look on his face. You 4 looking to learn from me? He asked them. Master Splinter said we should learn from you, Leo said with a nod. Splinter? Kushina asked, as she came out with a fresh pizza for Naruto and April. A new name, so he could hide from Shredder, Naruto explained, as he and April each took a slice. Ah, speaking of, did you find that punk ass yet? I want to show him something, Kushina asked Minato with a very unsettling grin, as her shadow moved. Not yet sweetie, but it looks like you have. Some new students to teach the basics to, Minato said, as he gestured to the turtles. Oh, so you lot want to be jujitsu sorcerers, Kushina asked with a smile at her new godsons. You bet. I wanna summon something gnarly looking. Like Naruto can, Mikey said with a smile. Naruto frowned at this, as it was a sore subject. Let's focus on summoning cursed energy, and coating your weapons in it first, Kushina said. Changing the subject. Wait, we can coat our weapons in it? Raph asked curiously. Oh, like what they do in One Piece. Sweet, Mikey said with a wide grin. Makes sense Raph. It explains why Naruto uses that glove, before he even attacks, Donnie said, as they all started to talk. Meanwhile, unseen to them across the street on a rooftop, they were being watched by Karai, who was using some binoculars. A few days later. It was now the weekend, and Naruto was walking April home, after another day of her helping him with his homework. You're getting better, Naruto. Soon you won't need me at all, April said, as they approached her place. Don't say that, I don't need a reason to do worse at school, Naruto said with a grin. April laughed at this a little, as she knew Naruto was kidding. Since even if he didn't need help with homework, they would still hang out. Well, maybe I can help you sometime with something, Naruto said, as he thought to himself. Well, maybe you can help me learn some of that cursed energy stuff, April said with a hopeful tone. Naruto paused in surprise at this, as he didn't expect this. I don't know April, he said. Come on, I see NC cursed energy just like the others. Why can't I? April asked, as she frowned. This isn't something you can just get into. It's dangerous, Naruto said, as he frowned. Please, April said, with her best puppy dog pout. That's not fair, Naruto said with a groan, as he felt his will slowly break. Sucker. Kurama yelled from inside Naruto's mindscape, before he started to cackle. Come on Naruto. I'm trained in hand-to-hand already. Maybe not as good as the turtles, sure, but I'm sure you can help me get better, April said with a pout, as she knew Naruto was close to breaking. Okay, fine. But we go at the pace I set. And you obey what I say, Naruto said firmly. As long as it's not like what your mom is putting the guys through, I'm good, April said with a grin, as they approached her place. Naruto nodded at this, as April entered her place, before he turned to leave. As he walked home, he was being followed by Kurai, who was jumping from rooftop to rooftop. As Naruto approached an alleyway corner, Kurai approached the edge of the rooftop to get him back in her sights, but saw he was gone. Where did he go? Kurai said, as she looked around for the blonde. Do you always stalk the ones who have saved you? Naruto's voice asked from behind Kurai. Kurai's eyes widened at this, before she spun around and swung her arm at Naruto, who blocked with his forearm, before she kicked at him. But he blocked with his knee and jumped back away from her. Hey, you're not too bad. Kurai, right? Naruto asked with a grin at the female ninja. Kurai kept her glare at Naruto, as she took a ready stance. Are you not gonna summon your pet monster again? She asked, as she stood at the ready, just in case he did. Naruto shook his head at this. Nah, I don't summon Hinata for just anything. I just summoned her to save April, because I wasn't sure what was after her, he said. That thing was gonna kill me, Kurai said, with a glare at Naruto. Yay, I'm sorry about that. You're okay now, right? Naruto asked with a frown, as he knew Hinata had roughed her up, before he had stopped her. I am the Shredder's second in command of the Foot Clan. I won't be killed so easily, Kurai said firmly. Obviously. So, why were you attacking April anyway? Naruto asked curiously, as he relaxed a bit. She's allied with the enemy, Kurai said simply, still standing at the ready. Yay, but she's not exactly as well trained as the turtles. And last I heard, the Foot Clan were supposed to have some honor, or did that change after Shredder took over? Naruto asked with a pointed look at Kurai. What do you know of the Foot Clan? Kurai asked with a suspicious tone. I know they used to be known to help whoever needed it back in the old days, Naruto said with a shrug. Kurai paused at this, as she didn't know about this. So, why are you following me? Are you looking for a date or something? Naruto asked with a teasing grin at the young teen girl. Kurai scoffed at this. I'm following you, 'cause I want to know what power you used to decimate my robot foot soldiers, and make a fool out of me, she said, as she glared at Naruto. Sorry, I can't say. As much as I'd like to tell you, I can't. Especially since my parents have an axe to grind with your dad, Naruto said with a hard tone. Your parents can fight like you too? Kurai asked with a suspicious tone. If you have trouble with me, my parents will be impossible for you, especially my dad, Naruto said with a chuckle. Kurai clenched her fists at this, before she moved to attack Naruto. But he was already in front of her, and poked her in the forehead, making her fall on her butt. Hey! Kurai yelled, as she rubbed her forehead and glared at Naruto. Look, before you start with the whole I won't be disgraced baloney, are you hungry? Naruto asked curiously. What? Kurai asked with a raised eyebrow. Are you hungry? 'Cause I am, and if you want, I'll treat you to something to eat, Naruto said. What are you playing at? Kurai asked with a suspicious tone, as she got on her feet. Nothing, I just want to hang out with ya. It's not like there is a chance of you being able to hurt me, Naruto said with a shrug, as he too RNED around and walked towards the fire escape. Kurai clenched her fists at this and glared after Naruto, before she followed him. The rising tide. Naruto walked into the restaurant, just as the last customer had left, with Kurai following him a few moments later. Hey Ka-san, I'm back and ready for some ramen. And bring a bowl for my new friend. Naruto yelled out. We're not friends, Kurai said with an annoyed tone. Not yet, but I'll wear you down, Naruto said with a chuckle. Which type of ramen? Kushina bellowed from the kitchen. Miso. What do you want, Kurai? Naruto yelled, before he turned to Kurai. Meat, Kurai said, after looking over a nearby menu. And meat for my new friend. Naruto yelled. Okay Naruto. Kushina yelled back from the kitchen. Kurai snickered at this. Your name means fish cake, she asked with a smug grin. It also means maelstrom, Naruto said, as his eyebrow twitched. Yeah, whatever you say, fish cake, Kurai said with a teasing smirk. Yay, well, your name means spicy hot stuff, Naruto said with his own grin. Before Kurai kicked him hard in the shin, making Naruto wince hard just as Kushina came out with bowls of ramen. Okay brat, I have you and your friends. Kushina was saying, before she spotted Karai and her eyes widened in surprise, as her face made her think of her old friend, Tang Shen. "Are you okay, Ka-san?" Naruto asked, as he rubbed his shin from Karai's attack, while hopping on his other foot. "Why yay, I'm fine," Kushina stuttered out, before she placed the bowls of ramen in front of Naruto and Karai, before she continued to look at the young teen girl. "What? Is there something on my face?" Karai asked, as she grabbed some chopsticks. "No, just enjoy your meal," Kushina said with a frown, as she went into the kitchen. "Where are you going, Ka-san?" Naruto asked curiously, as she was acting odd to him. "I have training with your god brothers, and I also have questions for them," Kushina yelled, before she was heard. Kicking open the back door of the restaurant. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this, before he shrugged and started to eat, while Karai was lost in her thoughts for a moment, before she started to eat too. With Splinter. Splinter was in his dojo meditating alone, in his thoughts, when crash. Ka-san's gone crazy. Mikey was heard yelling out in a panic. "I said talk, Boy Scout." Kushina's voice was heard yelling. Before another crash was heard. "Hey, what about the others? Why not ask them?" Leo's voice was then heard. "Don't throw us under the bus, Leo." Donnie was heard yelling. "Yay, fearless leader," she asked you. Raph's voice was then heard yelling. "Plus, we all did the not it thing, and you lost." Mikey was then heard yelling. "My mouth was full of pizza." Leo yelled, before another crash was heard. "Next attack won't miss. Blue boy, now talk. Why the fuck does Naruto's new friend look like Tang Shen?" Kushina bellowed out, making the whole lair shake. Splinter's eyes opened upon hearing this. Before he got up and went to the door, sliding it open to see that Leo was on the ground while Kushina had her foot on his chest, effectively pinning him to the ground, while the other turtles were hiding in the garage area. "Kushina, enough!" Splinter yelled out, getting everyone's attention. "Oh hey Yoshi, nice too," Kushina was saying before she paused, turning pale white as she spotted Splinter. "Ah, giant demon rat," Kushina screamed, looking around till she spotted a broom and held it up, smashing it on Splinter's head. "Wow, your street credit just evaporated instantly," Raph said, as he came out of the garage. Along with Donnie and Mikey. "Don't test me. I have a thing with rats." Kushina yelled at Raph before she went back to hitting Splinter with her broom. "Ow, ow, ow, da, ouch." Kushina, "Ow, stop. It's me, ow, ow, ow." "Yoshi." Splinter begged as his old friend mercilessly pummeled him with the boom. "Prove it," Kushina shouted, hitting him again. Okay. When we were teens, Minato's nickname for you was, "Shut you." Kushina yelled, hitting Splinter again with her broom. "Do you believe him now?" Leo asked with a groan, as he got up. "Yay, I do. Only a few people know about that," Kushina said, as she looked at Splinter in the eyes, and saw that despite the change to his body, his eyes were still the same. "Ah, I was hoping that sensei would reveal what your nickname was," Mikey said with a groan. "Yay, well keep wishing, Squirt. Now, I'm gonna guess that mutagen story the turtles told me about, they left out the part with you turning into this," Kushina said, as she gestured to Splinter, while slightly shuddering in fear. "Rats are not that bad, once you get used to them, old friend," Splinter said with a chuckle at this. "I'll take your word for it. Now, if you excuse me, I need to get back to making your sons talk," Kushina said, as she reached into her shadow and pulled out a mallet. "Ah, she's gonna do us like Harley Quinn," Mikey yelled in a panic. "Oh please, I'm not crazy like that lunatic. The voices I hear all say so," Kushina said, as she advanced towards them. "Kushina, enough. I know why you're here. Follow me and I will explain," Splinter said with a firm tone. "You lot got lucky, so expect me to up your training later," Kushina said to the turtles, as she dropped her mallet back into her shadow, before she followed Splinter into his dojo. "I blame you for not talking," Donnie said to Leo, annoyed that now they were gonna be lumped with more training, since their leader didn't talk. "Yeah, what he said," Raph said with a nod of agreement. Inside the dojo, Kushina looked around the dojo after she entered. "Nice dojo. It reminds me of the one back at the Hamato training ground," Kushina said, looking around, and she noticed the picture of Tang Shen and Miwa. Picking it up, she traced her hand over the face of her deceased friend, giving a sad sigh as she did. Not a day hasn't gone by that I don't miss her, Kushina said as she frowned. A sentiment we both share with my dear friend, Splinter said with his own frown. Yoshi, there's something you should know. Yesterday, Naruto came by with a girl, and she looked just like Tang Shen. Is she? Kushina asked, really hoping that her hunch was wrong. Splinter sighed at this, before he nodded his head. Kushina said nothing to this, but she clenched her fists and her shadow started to move. As if alive and growling was heard coming from it, as if a beast was living inside it. Before, I was just gonna kill Shredder, now I'm gonna make it nice and slow, Kushina said with a growl. As her shadowed hair moved about like tails. All these years have done nothing to quell that fiery spirit of yours, have they, old friend? Splinter asked with a chuckle. You bet your ass it hasn't, Kushina stated with a grin, as her shadow calmed down. But I'm afraid that Sake has grown more dangerous since discovering that I am still alive. He has replaced his F.U.T. ninja with soulless machines and toys with powers beyond his control, Splinter said with a scowl. You mean those Krong aliens the boys told me about? Kushina asked with a raised eyebrow. Yes. They are formidable adversaries and their list of foes only grows larger with every new mutant we face, Splinter stated. Looks like we're gonna have our work cut out for us, Kushina said as she thought to herself. This is not your fight, Kushina, you do not have to endanger yourself or your family. Splinter was saying, before Kushina held her hand up, interrupting him. You are my family, moron. You always have been and always will be, Kushina said, smiling at him. You Uzumakis are always so stubborn, Splinter said, as he shook his head and chuckled at this. Damn straight we are, Kushina said with a wide grin. Her hands on her hips. So how are my sons progressing learning from you? Splinter asked curiously. Well, they have talent, I'll admit that at least, Kushina said, as she thought about the past couple days of training with her godsons. I suppose you will be training them to summon their cursed aura soon. Splinter asked curiously. Yay, that's next. But I have something more important to do first, Kushina said, as she walked over to the door to the dojo. Oh, and what's that? Splinter asked, raising his eyebrow at his friend. Kushina said nothing to this and opened the door to the dojo. Okay, brats. I just realized your eating habits are a disgrace. So you're all on a diet, starting today. She bellowed out. The four turtles all yelled together in shock at this. But pizza is the food of the gods, Mikey stuttered out. Have you even tried other foods? Kushina asked curiously, as she raised her eyebrow at them. Does sewer algae count? Donnie asked, getting shudders from the other turtles at the memory of what they ate before they discovered pizza. Say what? What the hell, Yoshi? Kushina yelled, as she looked at Splinter with wide eyes. Scavenging wasn't always that fruitful, Kushina. Especially with the Krong around, Splinter said with a sigh. Kushina scowled at this, but said nothing as she couldn't blame Splinter for this. Well, that ends now. I'll be sending groceries down here with Naruto regularly from now on, in addition to feeding your boys at my restaurant, she said with a determined tone. Ah yes, April said. Yo. You have a restaurant on the surface, Splinter said with a nod at her, remembering how Kushina was a great cook. Yup. Don't worry, I'll send a cheesecake with the brat next time he visits, Kushina said with a teasing smirk at Splinter. Splinter's whiskers twitched at this, before he composed himself. Why would you make a cake out of cheese? Mikey asked with a tilt of his head. You poor kids know so little. Kushina said with a shake of her head, at the fact that her godsons knew so little about different types of food. So, are we gonna train today? Leo asked curiously. Fine. Today, we will be working on you brats summoning your cursed aura, Kushina said, as she looked at her godsons. Finally, Raph said with a grin, as he punched his fist into his hand. Follow me brats, we're gonna turn you into jujutsu sorcerers. Kushina said with a grin at them. Later with Naruto. Naruto and April were making their way into the lair, both carrying bags of groceries. Why are we doing this? April asked Naruto, as they carried the bags into the kitchen. Mom found out the turtles live on only pizza, so she's stepping in now and making them have a more varied diet, Naruto said, as he and April started to put away the groceries they had brought. I wonder where they are, April said, as she looked around and didn't see any of them. They probably ran off in protest when she said Oh, more pizza, Naruto said with a snicker, as he put some food in the fridge. April rolled her eyes at this, before she poked him in the forehead. Be nice. What if she made you go off ramen? She asked him, as she put some cans of food in a cupboard. Don't ever say that, Naruto yelled, as he shuddered at the very thought of this. Gah, this is bullshit. Raf's voice was heard yelling from the dojo, getting their attention. They then heard what sounded like Raf shouting and a thud. Sounds like mom's training them, Naruto said as he shook his head. Should we check on them? April asked curiously, as they finished putting away the groceries. May as well, Naruto said with a shrug, as they both walked over to the dojo and opened the door and entered it. When they entered, they saw Leo, Donnie and Mikey sitting in the dojo with dark auras around them, which they were focusing on trying to channel into their weapons. Raf meanwhile, was pinned to the ground and Kushina had her foot on his back, keeping him in place as he tried to get loose. Let me guess, he is having trouble summoning his cursed energy and he threw a tantrum. Naruto asked Splinter, who was sitting nearby watching, as he sipped some tea. That anger of yours is gonna get you hurt, Red, Kushina said with a casual tone, as she kept Raf pinned. I'm taking this from you, a hothead. Ow. Oi. Raf growled out in frustration, before Kushina stomped on his shell at this. I know when to stay calm and focused. You're just a hothead, who lets his anger cloud his judgment, Kushina said with a firm tone. Damn it. Let me up, you psycho. Raf yelled out, getting angry. And he's just proved her point, Naruto said, shaking his head at this. Yup, that's Raf. Always quick to anger, Donnie said, as he and the others stood up. Yup, but we love him anyway, Mikey said with a teasing tone, as he crouched down and pinched Raf's cheek. Let me up, Raf yelled, as he finally got loose of Kushina's grip and got up. Then took a swing at her with his fist. But she just took the punch to the face, which didn't affect her, before she poked Raf in the forehead with a small amount of cursed aura on her finger, which made Raf fall on his butt hard. You don't have a chance against her, without using a cursed aura, Leo said, as he shook his head at Raf. Even with a cursed aura, she would still curb stomp you all, Naruto said, as he shook his head. That's it. I'm out of here, Raf yelled, as he got up and stomped towards the exit. Splinter shook his head at this, as Raf left the dojo. Give him time. He will get it eventually. Would you believe I was the same way? Kushina asked Splinter with a slight chuckle. If you're helping the turtles unlock their cursed auras, can you also help me? April asked Kushina with a nervous tone. Wait a minute, she can actually see curses. Kushina asked, as she looked at Naruto with an accusing look. Well, Naruto said with a nervous chuckle, as he scratched his cheek. While looking off to the side. Oh sure, she saw Hinata beat up the footbots and Kurai, Leo said, nodding at Kushina, remembering that April could see curses. So you can see curses, Red. Kushina asked with a grin, as she looked at April with needy eyes. Why do I feel like I should be running away? April asked, as she felt nervous when Kushina looked at her. 'Cause you should be, Mikey said with an eerie tone, as he looked at April, with a torch under his face, that was turned on. Relax, Red, I have my hands full with these four already. The brat can train you. But you're limited to teaching her how to manifest her aura, Kushina said with a firm tone, as she looked at Naruto. That's fine. I have already been training her, Naruto was saying, before he was cut off. You what? Without my permission, Kushina yelled, as she pulled out a katana from her shadow. Naruto's eyes widened at his slip-up, before he ran off. Get back here, you brat. Take your punishment like a man, Kushina yelled, as she ran after her son, swinging her katana as she did. The next night, Naruto and April were on a rooftop, doing some meditation together, so April could try to manifest her cursed aura. Is it always this hard to learn? April asked curiously, as she opened one of her eyes. I'm afraid so. Now, keep focusing, or no food from my mom later, Naruto said, not opening his eyes. April said with a groan, before closing her eye. Naruto chuckled a little at this, as they both continued to meditate. I still can't believe she has talent in this. She's just some no-name brat. At least those turtles are mutants, so it makes sense, Kurama said in Naruto's mindscape. Well, Maybe she has some lineage with a family of sorcerers and doesn't know it, Naruto thought. Knowing this was a possibility, which he should ask his dad to look into. Before Kurama could respond to this, both Naruto and April heard the sound of a creature screeching, and what sounded like fighting nearby. Naruto was instantly on his feet, and ran over to the edge of the rooftop and looked around for what made that noise, with April not far behind him. Naruto! April yelled, pointing at a nearby rooftop. Naruto looked and saw what looked like a giant turtle, who had a spiked shell, long nails and small spikes coming out of his arms and legs, the top of his head and part of his chest. He also had stripes of cloth wrapped around his arms and legs, while holding a spiked mace in his hand. What got Naruto's attention was that this giant turtle was beating up Dani pretty brutally. Naruto activated his cursed aura and quickly jumped over the rooftop and readied his fist, which was covered in his aura. April pulled out what looked like a grappling hook, and fired it across the rooftops. So she could follow after him. Oi freak show, back off! Naruto yelled, as he slammed his fist into the giant turtle's shell, sending him away from Dani. Gah! The turtle yelled, as he slammed into the edge of the rooftop. Hey, you never told me that you had another turtle on the team, Naruto said to Dani, as April helped him up. We don't. He broke my arm, Dani said with a wince, as he held his broken bow staff and gestured to his limp arm. Naruto scowled at this, before he glared at the giant turtle and pulled the ring hanging off his necklace in a show of anger. As a small aura appeared around the ring, the giant turtle, while he couldn't see the cursed aura, his instincts were screaming at him to run. I normally don't summon Hinata, cause of how brutal she is with the enemy. But you pissed me off, by hurting my friend, Naruto said with a glare. Dani and April's eyes widened at this, as Naruto pretty much just threatened to kill the enemy. Naruto held up his ring to his finger and glared at the giant turtle. But before he could put the ring on, the giant turtle jumped off the rooftop and fled. Huh, smart for what looked like a mindless brute, Naruto said, as he lowered his hands. Naruto, Dani, April, Raph yelled out, as he ran over to them with Mikey close behind him. Whoa Dani, what happened? Mikey asked, as he helped April lift Dani to his feet. Oh, hey guys. You just missed a long-distant cousin of yours. He beat the hell out of Dani and I was gonna sick Hinata on him, before he ran away, Naruto said, as he put his ring back on his necklace. You were gonna sick that monster on Spike. Raph yelled at Naruto in shock, as he knew how brutal Hinata could be. Yeah, after what wait, how do you know its name? Naruto was saying, before he looked at Raph with a raised eyebrow. Wait, that was Spike. Good job with that mutagen Raph, Dani said with a groan, as he held his ribs. Here, let me help, Naruto said, as he took a breath and held out his palm. Soon, he made a light glowing aura appear around Dani, which slowly started to heal him. Whoa, you're a doctor? Mikey asked with wide eyes, as Dani winced as he felt his wounds heal. It's technically called a reverse curse technique, but it does heal wounds. It's very hard to use though, so let me focus, Naruto said, as he focused on healing Dani. So, Spike got into mutagen. And mutated into that thing? April asked Raph. Raph nodded at this, as he looked at Dani with a worried look, as he saw the wounds he had. And let me guess, he heard you ranting about how annoying your brothers are, and he's trying to get rid of them, Naruto asked, as he stopped healing Dani. Raph nodded at this, as he felt a lot of guilt now. Thanks Naruto, Dani said as he winced. Since he was still tender. You're not at 100% yet, so stay alert, Naruto said to Dani, before he turned to Raph. Look, I don't want to hurt your pet Raph. But if he doesn't back off, I may have to, he said with a firm look. I know. We should find Leo, he will probably go after him, since he's alone and looking for a container of mutagen, Raph said, nodding at Naruto. We can track him by tracking the container, Dani said as he held out a device of his, which looked like it was made of junk. I'll take your word that thing actually works, Naruto said with a chuckle. As they let Dani lead the way. After a few moments of following Dani, Naruto frowned slightly, as he felt like he was being watched. You feel it too? Kurama asked from his mindscape. Yay, he's following us. Naruto thought with a nod, as the group landed on another rooftop. While the others ran to jump to another rooftop, Naruto turned and glared at Spike, who had just landed on the rooftop behind them. Spike, why did you hurt Donnie? Raph yelled, as he had noticed Naruto had stopped. I told you Raphael, the name is Slash now, the giant turtle said, as he took his mace and spun it in his hands. You think he's compensating for something? Kurama asked with a snicker at Slash's weapon. Naruto ignored this and noticed the others were still here. Go find Leo and the mutagen, he said, as he readied his gauntlets, by channeling it in his cursed aura. Forget that. He hurt my brother. Raph yelled, as he readied his sai and charged at Slash. Damn it Raph, Naruto growled. As he attacked Slash with Raph, which was slightly easier for him, thanks to his cursed aura actually able to hurt Slash. Come on, let's go find Leo, Donnie said, as he grabbed April's shoulder. I'm not leaving Naruto alone with that monster, April said, as she watched Slash take a swing at Naruto with his mace, which he avoided. Ooh, you're worried Nyuk 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 ny, ow. Mikey asked April with a teasing grin. Before April slapped him on the back of the head, and then she slapped his face like Curly. We will come back as soon as we find Leo. Now come on, Donnie said, as he pointed with his tracker, which was spinning rapidly, showing the mutagen was close. April nodded at this, before she and Mikey followed Donnie. But as they ran, Raph was thrown past them and he crashed through a building, making a hole in the wall. Ouch, Mikey said with a wince seeing this. April and Donnie also winced at this as they looked at the hole, and saw that Raph had landed inside what looked like a little girl's room, with a little girl sitting at a small table, while across from her sat Leo. Donnie asked, surprised at seeing his brother sitting at the little girl's table and drinking tea. Bad time for a tea break dude, Mikey said. Yay, Naruto needs help with some mutant freak. April yelled at Leo. Leo nodded at this, before he grabbed what looked like a glowing canist from the little girl and ran out of the hole. Next time, I'll bring the tea, he yelled back at the little girl. Bye Mr. Turtle, the little girl said with a wave. That made me mad, Raph said with a growl, as he got up and jumped out of the hole to the rooftop opposite. If you're gonna get mad, then aim it at your buddy, before he hurts us. April yelled, as she and the other two followed him. What do you know about it? Raph said with an annoyed tone. Naruto said, if you want to bring out your cursed aura, you need a focus. Why do you want your cursed aura, and what will you use it for? April asked. Raph paused at this and thought about this. Why do I want my cursed aura? So I can protect my family and friends, of course. Raph thought, as he focused and as he thought this. A flash of cursed aura surged around his fists. Back with Naruto. Naruto was dodging around Slash's swing of his mace, before he punched the mace, shattering it as the debris of the weapon went flying. You're getting annoying Whiskers. Slash yelled at Naruto, as he threw his destroyed weapon away. You started this, Spike. Don't blame me for being able to fight back, Naruto said with a firm tone. Wait, that thing is Spike? Leo asked in shock, as he arrived with his katana ready. Yeah, and he hurt Donnie pretty badly, before I healed him, Naruto said, as he kept his eyes on Slash. Leo glared at this, before he activated his aura, and quickly channeled it through his katanas, before he jumped at Slash. Leo, wait, Naruto yelled seeing this, but it was too late, as Leo swung his katanas at Slash, who blocked with his forearm, causing the katanas to shatter. What? Why did? Oof. Leo yelled in surprise, before Slash slugged him in the face, sending him flying into a water tower nearby. Ha! That's what happens when you look down on people, and don't take me or Raph seriously. Slash yelled with a laugh. As Slash laughed, he didn't notice Raph appearing next to him, glaring at him and raising his fists, which had cursed aura around them. Slash soon did notice Raph, and turned to look at him. But before he could say anything, Raph grabbed him in a hug and with a mighty push, slammed Slash into the side of the rooftop and threw it, sending both Raph and Slash to the back alley below. Whoa, Mikey said with wide eyes seeing this, along with Donnie and April, who were helping Leo to his feet. Well, looks like Raph finally gained access to his cursed aura, Naruto said with a chuckle. I'll say, Donnie said, as he looked at the damage Raph left from slamming Slash through the side of the rooftop. Yeah, Raph was heard shouting, before several blows were heard landing, as a crash was heard and Slash was sent crashing into a parked garbage truck nearby. He's not gonna go all Hulk, right? Mikey asked with a raised eyebrow, as they watched Raph take some breaths. Raph then looked up at them. Are you all okay? He asked. Yay, we're all fine. Though Leo's katanas need replacing, Naruto said, as he looked at the katana handles Leo was still holding. What happened to them? April asked curiously. Yeah, I thought cursed aura was supposed to power up our weapons, Donnie said. As he looked at Naruto, expecting an explanation. Oh, it's easy to explain. Leo rushed channeling his cursed aura through his weapons, and when you do that, it makes your weapon break like glass, Naruto said. So that's why we focus on summoning our aura so much? Mikey asked curiously, as he had been wondering this. Yup, it's so you can get used to channeling your aura, Naruto said. As he looked at Leo. Leo frowned at this, as he felt like he knew he really messed up. Okay Raph, let's see if we can convince Spike to not be a moron, Naruto yelled down to Raph. Raph nodded at this, and turned to the garbage truck. But paused as he saw Slash was gone. Whoa, how can something that big move so quickly and silently? Mikey asked with wide eyes. Probably Cow. Say he was watching you guys train for so long, April said with a shrug, as she figured that was a sound theory. Makes sense to me, Naruto said as he nodded. Come on, let's get back home, Leo said to his team. The team all nodded at this. As they all moved to leave, Raph hesitating to follow, as he looked at the damaged garbage truck, lost in his thoughts about Slash. Hey, you doing okay bro? Mikey yelled down to his brother. Yay, let's get the mutagen back home, Raph said, as he leapt back up to the rooftop. Hey, cheer up Raph. At least now all four of you guys are ready to move on to next stage of Ka-san's training, Naruto said with a smile at them. This got groans from the four turtles, as they all didn't think of this. A few days later. It had been a few days since Raph had Slash and finally unlocked his cursed aura, and tonight, the group were all on patrol together. Well, trying to, since April was barely keeping up with them. Right now, she was trying to use her grappling gun to keep up with the turtles. But it was jammed, and before she could curse at it, Naruto scooped her up in his arms, and jumped after the turtles. Hey! April yelled in surprise, as Naruto carried her, while she wrapped her arms around his neck instinctively. What? Naruto asked, not noticing her blush. Nothing, April said, looking off to the side. Ooh, the dense stereotype, Mikey whispered to Raph, who snorted and laughed with his little brother at this. Donnie grumbled at this, silently cursing Naruto's luck. Come on guys, keep up, Leo yelled out. I am keeping up plenty, Naruto said. As he landed behind the turtles and put April down. Leo turned to look at Naruto and April, but paused as he spotted something on a rooftop across from them. We're being spied on, he said, as he pointed at the rooftop. Everyone looked, and saw a figure quickly running away across the rooftop. The turtles all quickly ran after the man, while Naruto quickly picked up April again, and took off after them. They soon stopped on a rooftop across from an apartment building, and saw the fleeing figure entering an apartment window, through a fire escape. Leo nodded at the team, before they all silently made their way inside. When they all got inside, they looked around and saw it was a regular apartment, only on the walls were a bunch of pictures and newspaper clippings, with strings attached to them like a web. What in the world? Donnie said, as he looked at this with interest. Someone needs a better hobby, dudes and dudette, Mikey said, as he also looked at the pictures. Guys, are you noticing a theme with all these pictures? Naruto asked, as he pointed at the pictures, which all had one thing in common. They all had April in them. That's a picture of me and my parents when I was a kid. April said, as she looked at a picture of her in the park with her parents. This is a picture of you with us, Leo said, as he looked at one picture of April with the turtles. And here's one of you on a date with Naruto, Raph said, pointing out a picture of April with Naruto at his parents' restaurant. She was helping me study, Naruto said with a shrug. This is getting really creepy. April said with a worried tone, as she looked at the pictures. Naruto was looking over a newspaper clipping, when he heard a door opening. He looked at a nearby doorway and saw a shadow under it. He then looked at Raph and nodded at him, who nodded back at him. Okay guys, let's get outta here, before he comes back and skins us alive or something, Naruto said to the others. While Raph silently moved to the doorway. Raph then quickly opened the door as he grabbed the man who was behind the doorway, and pulled the man into the room. He was an average-looking adult male, who wore a jacket over a suit and a fedora on his head. You have 10 seconds to explain yourself, Raph said, as he took out his sai and pointed it at the man. And you better have a good explanation for why you're stalking our friend. Leo said firmly. Stalking. I'm an investigative journalist, investigating the crime. My name is Jack Kurtzman, the man said. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this, before he looked at the pictures again. And took notice of a few articles about the destruction of the TCRI building. So why are you investigating April then? Donnie asked with a suspicious tone, as R.A.P.H. let Kurtzman up after Leo nodded at him. Cause she's a target for them, and I'm looking into why, Kurtzman said, as he adjusted his shirt. So, what have you found out, Jackie boy? Mikey asked with a grin. I know that when her mother was pregnant with her, she spent some time with the Krong before she escaped, Kurtzman said, as he went to a file drawer and pulled out a file. I'll take that, thank you, Naruto said. As he took the file and opened it. What can you tell us about the Krong? Leo asked curiously, as he figured any information about the Krong would help a lot. I know the Y have been here in this dimension for a long time, trying to develop a way to mutate our dimension so that they can take over. But in order to complete the mutagen, they need April, Kurtzman said, as he looked at April. This got wide eyes of surprise from everyone. But before anyone could respond, a crash was heard as the doors and windows were kicked open, as the Krong in their human disguises barged in, aiming their blasters. Eliminate the human known as Kurtzman and the turtles known as Turtles, and secure the one known as April O'Neil. The blonde is of no consequence, one of them said. Before his head exploded from Naruto slugging him in the head. Oh, is that a fact? Naruto asked with a glare, as his fist glowed with cursed energy. Unknown energy coming from human. Capture for study, one of the Krong said. As they all took aim at Naruto. Ha, good luck with that dudes, Mikey said with a laugh, as he readied his nunchucks, which he powered up with his cursed aura, before he swung at one of the Krong and slammed it into his side, sending him flying into the wall. Take them down, Leo yelled, as he slashed at one of the Krong, easily cutting through him thanks to his cursed aura. Donnie spun his bow staff over his head, before he slammed it into two of the Krong's sides, crushing their sides and destroying them. Raph charged at the last couple of Krong, and stabbed one easily between the eyes. Before slugging one in the chest, punching straight through it like he was punching through paper, while the alien jumped out with a screech of terror and wiggled away. Ah, no more, Mikey asked with a smile. At the fact that this was too easy. We need to leave and get April under protection, now, Naruto said firmly to the others. Right. And you should probably leave the city, Mr. Kurtzman, Leo said. As he looked at the reporter. I'm gonna go underground and try to get more information on the Krong. If you lot need any info, don't hesitate to call me, Kurtzman said, as he handed Leo, April and Naruto a business card, before he left the room to go pack. They all nodded at this, as they left the apartment through the window. The rising tide, sometime later. The group was now in the rising tide. After Naruto had dropped April off at her place and Kushina and Minato were talking to the teens about what they had found out tonight. What's to stop these freaks from getting April from her house? Kushina asked with a raised eyebrow. The fact that I left Hinata there, with orders to protect April, Naruto said firmly, as he looked at the file he took from Kurtzman's office. Oh, the Krong are so dead if they pull something, Mikey said with a chuckle at this. Yay, talk about being proactive, Raph said with a chuckle of his own. What are you two on about? Naruto asked, looking up from the file with a raised eyebrow at them. Kushina and Minato both groaned at this, as even they knew what the turtles were saying. I'm saying, you have inherited your dad's thing for redheads. Raph said with a smirk. Naruto's eyes widened at this, before he blushed brightly. Why you're both crazy. He stuttered out. You left a cursed spirit with her, to tear apart anything that threatens her, Donnie said with a flat tone. Which is a technique you only use, when it's something important, Leo said with a grin. Yay, the evidence is really piling up, Mikey said with a snicker. Naruto sputtered at this, before he glared at his god brothers and grabbed a bakken hanging on the wall. That's it. I'm at my limit. Let's bond as siblings, he yelled, before he approached the turtles. Run away. The 4 turtles yelled, as they all ran away, splitting up as Naruto chased them. As Naruto chased them, he left the file he took from Kurtzman open, that was on the page for April's mom. And it was showing her lineage, which showed she had roots to a family in Japan. The Inamaki family. Thanks for watching guys. Hope you all are enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like, share and subscribe. Also don't forget to support author of this fanfic. So let's end this video here. Until then, see you in next video.